Today, I will be ranking every single Super Smash Bros. Character roster on a list from 1 to 10. We have 7 rosters to rank, and yes, I know there's 5 games, but I'm including a before DLC and after DLC for Smash 4 and Smash Ultimate. Let's get to it. First up, we gotta start with the original. This is Super Smash Bros., the original on the Nintendo 64. And look at this roster. It's kind of adorable. Compared to what we got nowadays, these rosters are so expansive, but now we have a 12 character roster starting from 1999. It's kind of nice. I'm not gonna lie. You got your mainstay characters, your leaders of all your franchises: Mario, Link, Samus, Kirby, Fox, and Pikachu. Like, those are your bread and butter characters, but you got a couple of side characters as well. Donkey Kong, even though leading his own series in the Donkey Kong Country games. You got Yoshi. He's got his Yoshi's Island series as well, so that's probably a good reason why they were chosen for the list as well. But then you got 4 unlockables on the side, which are incredible additions to this game as well. Really help bolster the roster to another level. Luigi, Jigglypuff, additions to Mario and Pokemon series, but you also got Ness from Earthbound, a very interesting choice by the developers, and then Captain Falcon, which we all know was just the skin that was used over the test demo characters that they used for the fighting game before they transformed it into Super Smash Bros., but still an interesting addition nonetheless from F-Zero. I'm gonna find it really hard to rank Super Smash Bros. Rosters, especially compared to each other, because the rosters just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger as the games go along. This one I'm going to give a 4 out of 10, just because 1, it's up against some bigger and better Super Smash Bros. Rosters, which is understandable, but 2, there was a lot more ambition to this game than you may think, because 1, there were so many other rumors that characters could have been added. Pit was supposed to be added, King Dedede was supposed to be added, Mewtwo was supposed to be added. So many characters meant to be added to this game, but were just cut, whether due to time constraints or just difficulty with creating the character models. So ambition aside, what we got was a pretty solid character roster nonetheless, but we could have had a little bit more, I think. A little bit more, but compared to the rest of the Smash Bros. Rosters, a 4 out of 10, perfectly respectable, and I still enjoy coming back to this game and playing it from time to time. Next up, Super Smash Bros. Melee. Only 2 years this game came out after the original. They cranked this one out quick, and they more than doubled the character roster. There is 25 characters here. That is incredible, and they brought in a ton of amazing characters. One of the things I admire from Super Smash Bros. And just the entire series is that they take the 12 characters that we were just talking about in Smash 64 and they bring them back for every single game. So starting with this, when you get the 12 characters back, sure, could you have cut characters like Ness or Captain Falcon or Jigglypuff because they're not necessarily as popular as some of the better characters in this roster? Sure, you could have cut them, but you know they're not going to do that because they wanted to keep the integrity of the original game alive by having those 12 characters just survive through each and every installment of Super Smash Bros. Plus, these aren't even the most obscure characters in this list. They added obscure NES characters like Dr. Mario. Yes, just a clone of Mario, but still, Dr. Mario is incredible. You got Ice Climbers from that one game, Ice Climber, and then Mr. Game & Watch, not even an NES character, a Game & Watch character. How they came up with that idea, I have no idea. You got the 4 characters on the left and right of the wider rows. Those characters are just clone characters to the characters adjacent to them. So Dr. Mario is a clone of Mario, Falco is a clone of Fox, Gandorf is a clone of Captain Falcon, and Young Link is a clone of Link. And also we got Pichu is a clone of Pikachu, and Roy is a clone of Marth. So a lot of clone characters in this one are able to bolster up this roster's numbers, but still, the fact that we just get more characters, more unique characters, even if you have to clone them, is perfectly fine with me. It's what we call echo characters now in Smash Ultimate. I like it. We got Roy, who debuted in this game. Overall debut. He didn't even make an appearance in a Fire Emblem game until after this game came out, which I find incredible. Including Roy and Marth in Smash Melee was an odd choice. Not many people overseas here in America knew what the Fire Emblem series was at all, but I think including them in this game was a much better domino effect for the long run, especially for the Fire Emblem series, because it got so much more popular over the years in America. So shout out to them for including Marth and Roy. I'm going to give this roster a 6 out of 10. I talked very highly of this roster. Again, compared to the other rosters we will see down the board, it's hard to rank it any higher because the rosters just keep getting bigger and better as the installments go along. But for a roster with a size of 25, you really got some greats in there. And I didn't even get to talk about characters like Zelda or Bowser or Peach or Mewtwo making their debut. Characters that are almost just as important as some of the main hero protagonist characters deserve to get their shot in the game, and they did, which was really cool to see. Next up is Super Smash Bros. Brawl on the Nintendo Wii. I have a soft spot for this game, at least in terms of its subspace emissary mode. I love the main story modes of this game. It just felt like a movie. You were watching cutscenes and then just playing platformer Smash Brothers, but it was perfectly fine. I just enjoyed it for the cutscenes. It was awesome to see the characters animated in 3D. But this game's roster, let's talk about the roster, only jumped up 10 in comparison to Melee. So Melee at 25, this game only has 35 characters compared to Melee's 25. That being said, though, this was the first game to finally feature cuts. A lot of characters, shockingly, were cut from Super Smash Bros. Brawl. We didn't see Dr. Mario return, we didn't see Roy return, no Pichu, no Young Link, and no Mewtwo, shockingly. Mewtwo is probably the most shocking one of them because it's like a main Pokemon villain. But as you can see, we got a ton of incredible debuts and replacements. And it's incredible to see just the layout of the roster. I think this is one of the smoothest roster layouts, despite how small it looks. It's one of the smoothest layouts because you got all the Mario characters on the left side with Diddy and Wario making their debuts. Then you got all the Zelda characters in that third column with Toon Link making his debut, replacing Young Link essentially, so that's pretty cool. Then Samus's column is just all one-off characters, and you got a couple of debuts, Pit in there, and then Rob. I love Rob. Rob debuted as a playable character in Mario Kart DS, and then for some reason they just decided to carry him over to Smash Brawl. I don't know why, but now he's been in every Smash Brothers since, and I love it for that. So shout out Rob for making his debut and just sticking with the series. He's basically the Smash Brothers mascot at this point, I feel. Then you got your Kirby characters in that column with DDD and Meta Knight finally making their debut. They should have been in Smash 64 and Melee, and now they finally get to make their appearance in Brawl. And then Olimar from the Pikmin series, because that game has been blown up too a little bit. Then in the next column, you got Fox with Falco, and then Wolf making his debut in Brawl as well. And Captain Falcon, of course, just being that one-off character there to fill out the column of 4. You got an all Pokemon column after that with Pikachu, and then some new debutants, the Pokemon trainer and Lucario. Ike makes his debut for the Fire Emblem series, replacing Roy, and then Lucas makes his debut in the Earthbound series, or the Mother series, however you want to call it, and just ends up being almost like a Nest clone in a way. And the far right column is basically your third-party characters. This was the first game to introduce third-party characters with Solid Snake and Sonic the Hedgehog. So overall, a very solid roster, and almost all of these characters are involved in the subspace emissary in some way. The only characters that aren't are Toon Link, Wolf, and Jigglypuff, because those are the last added characters into the game. Again, I don't know why Jigglypuff had to be waited to the very end of the development cycle to be added into the game. I felt like they still need to keep that integrity of Smash Bros. 64 characters, all 12 of them being brought through every single installment, and they almost broke with this one. But luckily, they decided to keep Jigglypuff in this game and keep that integrity alive. I love this roster. I think it's phenomenal for only 35 characters. 39 if you want to include the Pokemon trainer as 3 separate characters. Sheik separate from Zelda, and Zero Suit Samus separate from Samus. Because you can do that with Final Smashes, Samus can change to Zero Suit Samus. I'm going to give this roster a 7 out of 10. I like it a lot. The introduction of third-party characters are great. I think a lot of the debutants we got were nice, and a lot of the replacements I think were justified. There's really not a lot of fluff in this roster, and I'm willing to give it the praise it deserves. Next up, we have the launch roster for Super Smash Bros. 4, or Smash 3DS and Wii U. I'm not going to rank the roster separately simply because they have the exact same roster. If there was a difference, even in just one character, if there was a difference, I would have ranked them separately. But no, they all had the same characters from launch, and they all included the same DLC. And that's important because the only character from Brawl that did not return besides Solid Snake were the Ice Climbers. And the Ice Climbers, for some reason, did not come back because the 3DS had limitations. And because of that, they were cut from the Wii U version of this game as well, which we are looking at the roster from the Wii U version of Smash 4. But this is a pretty gargantuan roster. It has 49 characters, 51 if you want to include all 3 different Miis as their own characters. So a pretty huge jump from Smash Bros. 35 to go all the way up to 51. 16 characters is pretty incredible. Again, some of those cuts are a little questionable, incredible. But the funny thing is, the only character that the launch roster of this game brought back from Melee was Dr. Mario. Mewtwo was nowhere to be seen, Pichu was nowhere to be seen, Roy was nowhere to be seen, and Young Link was nowhere to be seen. It was just Dr. Mario. Why? I don't know. I like Dr. Mario, so I'm happy he's here. They included almost every other character from Brawl again, except the Ice Climbers and Snake, like I mentioned before, but we got a ton of newcomers. Rosalina, Bowser Jr., Little Mac, Zero Suit Samus is separate from Samus now, Palutena is here, Robin, Lucina, Duck Hunt Dog, crazy, I know. Greninja, the only new Pokemon edition, Villager, because of course Animal Crossing was doing well at the time, the Wii Fit trainer, very questionable, Shulk, Dark Pit, had to get that clone in there for Pit. I mean, why not? And then the last three characters, Sonic was from Brawl, but then we also got Pac-Man and Mega Man. Oh boy, those were incredible additions. Those additions, especially Mega Man's, helped make Smash 4 one of the most hyped games getting ready to come out. Like that mid 2014, like E3 2014 to Smash 4's release was such a hype time, just getting to see all the character trailers and who was going to come out for the game and who was going to be playable. We were just excited and expecting and anticipating trailer after trailer after character trailer. People were making fake leaks with having like Rayman be a playable character. That was a time as well. Like fake leaks were going crazy. So this roster is a lot of fun. I will say though, a lot of the characters that they introduced in this game weren't as substantial as the characters that we saw in Brawl. I don't care much for Villager. I don't care at all about Wii Fit Trainer. Dark Pit doesn't make any, like Palutena's fine, but Dark Pit, I know Uprising Link just came out a couple years before this game did, but like you don't really need Dark Pit. Lucina was just fine. Like Robin, I feel like would have made a better choice just to stay at that one sole representative. Duck Hunt, I love Duck Hunt. It's a beautiful NES cameo, but like it's so strange and weird. And Bowser Jr., just that entire row of Mario characters, I just feel like Bowser Jr. doesn't necessarily belong in that same echelon as the rest of the Mario characters we see up there. Even Diddy Kong, but Diddy Kong was in Brawl, so I'll cut him some slack there. So I feel like just the bit of questionable character choices we got here, for some reason, I'm gonna do it, is gonna make this roster stay at a 7 out of 10 for me. It would be above Brawl's roster, of course, if I were to make it that way, but not enough. The newcomers we saw here, despite the anticipation that we saw in the trailers leading up into the game that we experienced as someone that was lived through that mid 2014 era, it just wasn't enough for me personally, I think, to up this roster to that next level. But clearly all that needed to be done to bring that roster up, because man, it was so close, is we just needed a little bit of DLC. And here's where Smash Brothers Wii U and 3DS DLC comes into play. We didn't get a ton of DLC, not like Ultimate. We got about 7 characters, but boy, were they 7 characters that we needed. First off, right before the game launched, they announced that Mewtwo would be DLC available in like a couple of months after the game came out, and everyone was so hyped. Man, reactions were going crazy for Mewtwo, and sure enough, Mewtwo made it back into the game, and boom, beautiful, another Melee character that was cut from Brawl finally brought back in Smash 4. You love to see it. But that was just the tip of the iceberg, because we got Lucas finally brought back from Brawl. I don't know why he was initially cut from Smash 4, but boy did they bring him back. But here's the thing, Lucas did not come alone. There were leaks that 3 characters were dropped at once. Those leaks included Lucas, Roy, and Ryu. It would have been so cool if those leaks were true, and eventually they were. Lucas was announced, then Roy, another Melee character that was cut from Brawl, brought back to Smash 4. That was beautiful to see. And then we got another third-party character, but this one a true fighting representative, and who better than Capcom's Street Fighter's Ryu to represent. So that was an incredible moment. But that was all we got for about 5 or 6 months, until the end of 2015, when out of nowhere we got a collab we never saw coming, and from Final Fantasy VII, Cloud gets announced and broke the internet. Like that announcement, I remember vividly, and watching so many people's reactions to it, it was wild. Seeing Cloud from Final Fantasy, even as someone who doesn't play Final Fantasy or RPGs much at all, seeing the hype around someone as big in gaming as Cloud be playable in Smash Brothers, truly merging consoles from PlayStation to Nintendo, was a monumental moment. And then the DLC kind of ended on a relatively poor note after that extreme high from Cloud. We had Corrin, another Fire Emblem character, which sure, fine. I actually enjoyed playing Corrin in this game, so I'm okay with it in hindsight. And then we got Bayonetta, which Bayonetta had a relatively controversial reveal trailer. We don't really know if she actually won the ballot, but it was just who they decided to throw in. I'm pretty sure that's what ended up being concluded, but I'm not entirely sure. Regardless, though, we can't change the past, and Bayonetta ended up being the final DLC character. The entire roster of 51 wasn't enough for me to bring it from a 7 to an 8, this Smash 4 roster, but all we needed were just 7 more characters, each of a substantial quality, I guess except for Corrin, but the rest of them with a substantial quality to bring it up to an 8 out of 10. I think this roster is a much more complete roster than what we saw at launch. It was pretty close. I love a lot of the launch characters, but also a lot of the launch characters were questionable for me. There was no question that the DLC characters really lifted up this roster. And now we come to the piece de resistance. We got 2 versions of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate rosters to look at. First up, the launch roster. Starting off, this is what the roster looked like at launch when you went through the entire game and unlocked all the characters, because this game, there was only 8 characters to start with, the same 8 you started with in Smash 64, with a beautiful homage to that game. And yes, keeping all 12 characters. And not only that, as you guys can see, all 12 characters plus Dark Samus are on the top row. So they are truly highlighted in this game. And that is what Smash Ultimate came to do. It was an evolution or a pinnacle of Super Smash Bros. History. This roster is structured in a perfect way. Maybe not to others, but to me, I love that they structured this roster with the exclusion of the Echo characters based on their debut appearance in Smash Bros. Series. You got the entire Smash 64 crew up top, and then the entire second row and a little bit of the third row is comprised of characters that debuted in Melee, and then the rest of the third row and half of the fourth row are characters that made their debut in Brawl. The rest of the fourth row and the entire fifth row are all the Smash 4 debut characters, and then Inkling plus the bottom row are all characters with the exception of the Mii's who debuted in Smash Ultimate. I just find this to be a beautiful layout for the roster. Could it have been laid out by series? Yeah, it could have, but it has been laid out by series for the past 2 games. I feel like it needed a change, and especially with Smash Ultimate being that pinnacle of Super Smash Bros. History, deserves to be based on release date. And also, if you thought that Smash 4 character reveal trailers in anticipation was hype in 2014, man, from E3 or March 2018 even, once this game was even announced, all the way to December when this game came out, that entire year 2018 was basically just built around hype and anticipation for this game. Boy, oh boy, did they deliver, because so many character reveal trailers went crazy. Of course, the Inklings when the game first got announced, and then at E3 when we saw Ridley, and then a couple months later we get Simon and Richter, and then King K. Rool just a little bit later in that same presentation, and then towards the end of the year before the game came out, we get Isabelle and Incineroar and Ken, like huge characters. And then let's not forget some of the Echoes, Dark Samus, Chrom, and then the characters that make their triumphant return. Y'all remember the E3 trailer? This roster, it's centered around the moniker "Everyone is here," and that was their whole point. They really did bring back everybody. Nobody was left behind, and they emphasized this. One of my favorite shots from that trailer was Toon Link in the same shot, and then Young Link dropping out of thin air. It's like those were the 2 most replaceable characters, where you swapped Young Link out from Melee to Toon Link in Brawl, but then now in Ultimate, they are both living together in unison. Ice Climbers are back too. Pichu returned finally. Solid Snake returned. A bunch of characters finally got their long-awaited return. Everyone is here. That moniker, that saying truly defined this game, and it shows how much passion, how much love, and how much more ultimate this game is compared to the rest of them. Even before DLC, I was very much satisfied with this roster. Isabelle excluded. This, regardless of that, is a 10 out of 10 roster. But now, I mean, I've pretty much said everything I needed to say, but we might as well give a nice coronation to the greatest roster in probably near gaming history. This is the Smash Ultimate roster with all the DLC, and you guys already know what it looks like. Like, those of you that play Smash Brothers, y'all don't need an introduction onto what this roster is. It is huge. It's so huge, it's almost overwhelming, but it's fun, and there are just so much gaming history behind this roster. But we already talked about the whole everyone is here thing from the first roster, but now we are after DLC. So what did they add? Well, just take a look at the rest of that 6th row plus the bottom row or the 7th row. 7 rows of characters. And each row is 13 characters each. One row of characters in this game is more characters than the entirety of Super Smash Bros. 64. 2 rows in this game has more characters than the entirety of Melee. 3 rows in this game has more characters than the entirety of Smash Brawl. 4 rows in this game, more than the entirety of the launch roster of Smash 4. So yeah, this game is crazy with its characters, and that's even before we touch the DLC. The DLC was beautiful. It wasn't staggered in random drops like it was in Smash 4. They really brought it out in 2 Fighters Pass volumes. Now, the drops within those volumes were relatively random. We were expecting them one at a time. They were a couple months apart per character, but man, it made it so much fun to anticipate which character was going to drop when. Piranha Plant technically wasn't even part of a Fighters Pass. He was just a free character, so you got to have him. He just came out a couple months after the game came out, so technically he counts as DLC. But then Fighters Pass Volume 1, you got Joker, Hero, Banjo, Terry, and Byleth. It starts off on a huge high, has a huge peak with Banjo, and then kind of falls off a little bit. Personally, I like Terry. I thought his introduction was really fun, and Byleth was just kind of meh, you know, another Fire Emblem character at the time, but just all right. But at the time, let's take a look. In hindsight, this roster is huge, and Byleth is a fun character to play from time to time. Not really fun to go up against. And then the Fighters Pass Volume 2 came out, and oh, this is where things got crazy. Again, started off on that relative low with Min Min. ARMS is not really a well-known series, and not many people would have considered it for Smash Bros. The only reason we were considering Min Min was because Nintendo themselves announced that an ARMS character would be revealed in the next Direct when Min Min was getting ready to be announced, but Nintendo didn't want to directly announce Min Min yet. They just said, oh, an ARMS character. Then the internet broke in Steve, Minecraft Steve, the Steve that everybody was like, oh, haha, funny, Minecraft Steve and Smash Brothers. No, that's real. That is real now. And I thought I was living a dream. I was doing like homework for my graduate classes at the time, and then this character gets announced out of nowhere. As much as I cannot stand playing as him or against him in Smash Brothers, his inclusion is monumental. It's historic. Minecraft was an indie game when it came out, but it became one of, if not the best-selling game ever. So yeah, it only makes sense for Steve to make a roster that is comprised of some of the greatest icons in all of gaming. And then we get to the Game Awards of 2020, Sephiroth comes out. We get another iconic villain. The next year starts, we get Pyra/Mythra, which is great. It's fine, you know, I'm with it. Xenoblade 2 gets some representation finally after Rex being snubbed from the launch roster of this game. But then E3 of 2021 comes around, we get Kazuya, and Kazuya is a huge pain in the butt to face off against, but a fun character, can finally join Ryu, Ken, and Terry as like that fighting game character rep. And finally, in 2021, October, the last character was announced. So much speculation, and everybody got surprised when it ended up being the one and only Sora. And my, oh my, what a perfect way to cap off the greatest roster in potentially all of gaming. This is the best roster in all of Smash Brothers. It is an easy 10 out of 10 in my books. Like, that's not even a question. Some of you are going to probably go out and say, hey, well, quantity doesn't always mean quality, but this is all quality. Yeah, I mean, you got a few. All right, let's be real. Isabelle, not quality. Wii Fit Trainer, not quality. Byleth and Min Min, not really quality, but like, you know, they're okay. Dark Pit, I don't know if I'd say quality. Ice Climbers, I mean, still cool. Are they quality though? I don't know. But like, how many did I name? Like 5, 6? There's 86 characters in this roster. A lot of them are meaningful gaming icons that have left an impact in this medium that we all come to enjoy. Because of that, having a game where all of these characters are in unison, are in the same game, where you can have fantastical matchups between characters that you never thought would ever see the same screen. It's amazing. Smash Bros. Ultimate knocked it out of the park and shows that true crossovers can really be beautiful. And this is a one-of-a-kind game and a one-of-a-kind series. I may be awful at the game, but boy, do I love the history around it and the meaningful impact it had on the gaming industry. And I hope Smash Brothers continues in whatever way, shape, or form it may be. 10 out of 10 this roster. No other way to put it. So that's it. That's my list. I mean, we all know this was pretty expected. All the rosters were just going to get better from here. There was really no surprises here like with the other past 2 videos I did. But I hope you guys enjoyed just taking a nice little retrospective, almost deep dive. It was a nice trip down memory lane, just going through the entire history of Super Smash Bros. And their character rosters. So I really enjoyed this video. Again, no crazy surprises. If you guys enjoyed, please feel free to give it a like. I'm enjoying making these character roster ranking videos, and you guys seem to be enjoying them as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if you are new. Stay all pro, and I'm out of here.